One by one, an extract from the anthology Shades of the Unknown by John Wing. Every year we meet on the same month, on the same date, at the same time, at the same place. We were 10 strangers. I was on a hiking holiday in the Lake District with my friend Simon McPherson. We had just completed the Sheffield Pike Loop from Patterdale. Not an exhausting walk by any means, of about 5 miles and an elevation of over 1,600 feet. It had been a mixture of cloud and sun, but for late September, especially for Cumbria, good walking weather. Truth be told, Simon and I had just done a couple of not too demanding saunters over the past 2 days in preparation for the more strenuous hike of Helvellyn that we intended to do on the following day. We were back at the car park by 3:30 p.m. and drove to our cosy 17th century hotel set in 12 acres of its own land at the end of a long tree-covered drive. This quaint, isolated holiday retreat sat comfortably overlooking the captivating valley of Martindale. This was ideal for me, getting away from the hustle and bustle of modern, chaotic, everyday life. Dinner was served from 7 p.m. Sam and I made for the restaurant at 7:30. We sat down at our designated table by the window. The outside lights of the hotel were on, but apart from lighting up the patio, everything else was cloaked in darkness. Rain steadily fell, constantly beating against the glass like fingers tapping impatiently. As I looked around, I noticed the other guests, most of whom I had said a friendly hello to in the reception area or on the stairs. There was a table of three tables of 2, including our own, and one person sitting by themselves, a black man whom I judged to be about my age, 38, whom I had not spoken to at all because our paths had never crossed. When the waiter came, I ordered a glass of house wine, and for starters I had mushroom soup. Simon had prawn cocktail. For our main, we both decided upon sesame chicken, served with steamed broccoli, rice and baby corn on the side. As we ate, Simon and I agreed upon an early start tomorrow to take on Helvellyn. The weather forecast was promising. As we discussed our intentions, I was aware of others gently speaking with the odd outburst of laughter or the summoning of the waiter for more wine. It was an altogether pleasing, amiable atmosphere, and one that should have continued so. However, at precisely 8 o'clock, just as our main dishes had been served to us, everything changed in an instant that would affect our lives forever. The whole room was suffused in an achingly penetrative bright light. Although I wanted to close my eyes, I couldn't. I sat there, wide-eyed, unable to move, staring helplessly into sheer incandescent white, as if the sun had suddenly come out of hiding of the night sky, blinding us all in its intensity. Even though I was sitting next to Simon, I could not see him. In fact, I was unable to make out anything. I was totally cocooned in that pervasive, dazzlingly white shroud. Another thing I became abundantly aware of was the lack of sound. I couldn't hear a single thing. No screams, no shouts, no exclamations of help or my God, what is that? I couldn't even hear my own breathing, even though I must have been, because I was very much aware of my rapid heartbeat and my fear-induced sweat. How long did it last? It could have been seconds, minutes or hours. I couldn't say. But I do know, when that ordeal was over and the overbearing brightness just vanished as quick as it had come, when I looked at my watch, the time still showed it was 8 o'clock, which I knew was impossible. For a good few moments, no one spoke, no one moved. We were all still in a state of shock, trying to come to terms with our experience. Then I heard a voice say, "What was that?" and another asked, "What just happened?" and, "Isabel, are you all right?" The whole room filled with questions as everyone talked at once. As for me, I turned to my friend. "Simon, are you okay?" He didn't say anything. He was obviously still traumatized, as was I really. I was about to ask him again when he looked at me, all colour drained from his face, when he clumsily said, Did that, what? I don't know what it was, but yes, it did happen. I was about to add further comment when a woman screamed and all heads turned to look at her, gazing at the vacant chair at her table. As a doctor, I instinctively rushed over to her side to try and calm her, realising she was in severe shock. "Arthur!" she exclaimed. "Arthur! Arthur!" She kept shouting his name. I remember now she had been sitting with a man whom I presumed was her husband. "He's gone," she declared. "He's gone." She fainted. Thank goodness I was there to catch her in my arms, or she could have hurt herself badly. The young woman, Isabel, who looked to be in her late teens, started to cry. Her mother and father tried to console her. Everyone began talking again, asking questions of one another, attempting to understand what they had all just experienced, but failing to come to any acceptable conclusions. As for me, having persuaded one of the other women to look after the inconsolable woman, I went into the kitchen to find the chef and his assistants cleaning up and preparing some desserts, and to my surprise, I found out that they had not been exposed to any strange bright light and were flummoxed at my suggestion of such a thing. There was no choice but to call the police, as Marjorie, the hysterical lady, was insistent we find her husband. When they arrived, we each told our account. I don't know what they must have made of it, especially as the kitchen staff were oblivious to what had occurred. They took our names and addresses, stating that they would investigate further. As for the sobbing Marjorie, she was escorted by a policewoman to a car to receive further assistance. That was 5 years ago. Since then, we have all returned to the same hotel on the same date, on the same month, to go through the exact same experience at precisely the same time of 8 o'clock. And after the light vanishes, always one of us is missing. There are only 5 of us left now. You might be thinking, why go back then? The simple answer to that is we have no choice. You see, we all have the strongest urge, just like salmon have to go back to their mating ground, or like lemons supposedly have the desire to jump off a cliff en masse. We can't resist the pull that forces us to return year after year. Believe me when I say we've all attempted to ignore it, but when we have tried to dismiss our compulsion, blinding headaches attack us mercilessly, or we're unable to sleep, and much worse if we persist in refusing our destiny. And now we're on our way again, for the 6th time, speeding along the M6, a journey of nearly 5 hours. For most of our travel, Sam and I barely speak to one another. The radio does the talking, of which I'm hardly aware of, the words not registering any meaning as I'm driving along, deep in my own thoughts. I'm sure it's pretty much the same for my companion. It's only when we're on the A591, about 15 miles from our destination, that Simon suddenly blurts out, "Stop the car! Stop the car!" I notice a sign for a lay-by up ahead. I pull in, leaving the engine idling, but turning the radio off. Ours is the only vehicle. "I can't do this anymore." He drops his head into his hands and then murmurs, "I can't." There's a heavy silence between us, apart from the engine's purring and the gentle tapping of rain on the car roof. I want to go home. "Simon," I touch him on the shoulder, "listen to me." He raises his head, turns and stares at me, and see tears running down his face, which looks haggard and worn. God knows what mine must look like, I thought. "We're in this together, Simon. We're not going to be beaten by this. I wasn't convinced by my own words, to be honest, but I felt I needed to say something positive and hopeful. Wiping his tears, he said resignedly, "It's no use. We're beaten." I was about to say something when he grabs me. "One by one we're taken, and there's nothing." Then with greater exclamation, "There's nothing we can do about it." Of course he's right. There's not a damn thing we can do. Looking him in the eyes, I reply, "I know." With those two words of acquiescence, I put the car into gear and drive off. The silence is even more oppressive between us now. Neither of us want to continue. Neither of us want to arrive at our destination. But neither of us have any choice. Damned if we do, damned if we don't. If you're intrigued how this story continues, it is available to download or purchase as a paperback from Amazon in my anthology, Shades of the Unknown.